How's it going?
I haven't seen you for a while.
There you are. And hi, Jan. How are you?
Good morning. How are you?
Excellent. All right. Let's do it. Um, this is all kind of newfangled technology for me here. Um,
Yeah, I've usually been a Skype guy. So
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm trying this. But, well, let me go to first of all.
I used to use Skype for years, and I switched to Zoom, and I'm a lot happier with it for a lot
Are
of
you?
yeah,
yeah.
Oh, okay. How do you push record on this?
Down at the bottom in the middle.
I have. I don't see anything that
share
says.
screen, record.
I got
Hover over the bottom bar. You'll see it next to share screen.
share screen. Okay. I got. Let's see. I've got under more. Oh, I am recording. I think it says pause recording. So I'll assume it is being recorded. Anyways, my goal here is to set up a show that I can do Monday through Friday around noontime Eastern, and just invite people in. We could talk about anything we want. We could talk about news and issues of the day, and take calls. It's sort of like good old-fashioned talk radio, except it's online. I mean, I was a radio talk show host for years in Greater Boston at various stations, and since my station was sold and they went to an easy listening format, which did not describe me, I've been contemplating ways to get back into it, and I think this might work. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, noon my time a lot of days is not good. I should be heading to my chiropractor right now, so I just rescheduled to join you. So
Thank you.
Typically, right now would not be a good time for me.
Okay. Now, and when you say you were heading for your chiropractor, how does that describe the situation for you with regard to the virus, the pandemic? I mean, are you getting back to normal over there?
Oh, California was one of the first to go on lockdown, but I'm not too worried about it. I don't go around wearing a mask and stuff. The best cure is fresh air and sunshine and whatnot. I've got friends that are doctors. They gave me hydroxychloroquine early on if I needed it. And, I've got medical grade zinc and stuff. So not too worried about it, but there's been, on the whole mountain, there's been like 7 people that have gotten it. Nobody's died. The Riverside sheriff, one county over, about 20 minutes from here, he made national news yesterday because he's calling for them to, knock it off and let people go back to work.
Oh, I saw that.
The Surgeon General keeps saying, stop wearing masks. You're making more people sick. And, the Surgeon General has come out twice this week telling healthy people to stop wearing masks, and only if you have pre-existing conditions. And you still, go to the grocery store or whatnot, people are still wearing stupid masks. But, there was the one person in New Jersey that gave themselves CO2 poisoning, passed out and hit a tree and died from wearing a stupid mask.
Yep.
So the worst thing you can do is wear a mask all day long when you need more oxygen for your immune system.
Yeah. Did you want to chime in?
No, I was just made a snarky comment that at least the guy didn't die of coronavirus.
Well, that's true.
Well, and as many death certificates as they've faked, they've probably put it corona related. I wouldn't be surprised for a second.
I think that the statistics show that I think it's something like 70 or 80% of the people who die are over 70. They're in nursing homes and they are with pre-existing conditions, mainly that they're obese, and that obesity leads to high blood pressure and diabetes. And, when you have those situations, any respiratory disease can be very dangerous, if not fatal, particularly this one. And that therefore it's been suggested, and several countries are doing this, particularly Sweden, that you protect people who have those conditions.
Yeah, it should be the people who have those conditions that are on lockdown, not the whole rest of the world, which is absolutely absurd. And they reacted without knowing much about the virus in the first place, and it's like, working from a negative. You don't work from what you don't know. You work from what you do know. And so, it's like the next county over, they said they had 2,300 cases and 183 deaths or something like that. But, there were people with pre-existing conditions. So those people should be on lockdown and not everybody else. But
Well, you notice that the reopening is going to be phased in, which is exactly how they should have had the lockdown, such as it is. As you're saying, the people that are most susceptible are the ones that don't go out. So,
what's up, John?
Hi, John. How are you?
Your mic is not on, John.
You put on your mic. There we go. And
So,
John, of course, is the author of School World Order, the technocratic globalization of corporatized education. Good guy, good book. So you're welcome to join us. In a way, the government had it quite backwards, because if they had protected people who had pre-existing conditions, like people in nursing homes, by making sure that anyone who went in there had been screened, which they didn't do, instead of making everybody else who's okay locked down, then maybe we could have gotten a handle on this thing. I don't know.
yeah.
one of the takeaways from this, but I'm sure everybody in this group already knows, that the state of public health leadership has been abysmal for the last 50 years.
Well, more like 75. Ever since they told people to go on a low-fat, high-carbohydrate diet,
There you go.
Yes.
eat your healthy whole grains and stay away from your steaks, your butter, and your eggs. Ever since they told people that, everybody's been sick and obese, and grains are highly inflammatory and cause, wheat alone causes at least 40 different diseases. Low-fat diet causes all kinds of health problems and diseases, and the bad cholesterol is mostly from grains. The good cholesterol is from meat, butter, and eggs. So they've got everybody running around on a compromised immune system, low testosterone. They're starving people's brains from not getting enough fat and cholesterol.
Is that the reason?
What's that?
No, so that's why everybody's stupid. But,
Well, that's actually definitely related, because the brain is made out of like 77% cholesterol.
correct.
So why the hell would you tell people to go on a low cholesterol diet? And from some of the doctors that I've spoken to, the closer to 100 you get, the closer to 1,000 your cholesterol level should be. To ward off Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and this kind of stuff. So they've got everybody going the exact opposite direction, and they've got everybody down at like 175 now or whatever it is, and it's absolutely ridiculous. There's no scientific foundation for it. And then, they confuse LDL cholesterol from grains with HDL from meat, butter, and eggs. And, they've caused rampant heart disease and obesity and all kinds of stuff, and you see people on the keto diets, the high fat diets, and they're all trim and in shape, and everybody's like, oh, and I've done it for a decade now. I would have died in the hospital years ago. And I've had people tell me, well, aren't you afraid you're going to die of a heart attack? It's like, look at me, look at you, look at me, look at you,
Yeah. No, I mean, it's, I think in the late 60s, the whole no fat thing became a real craze, a fad, really. And a lot of it was money driven. A lot of it was industry driven. You had former President Dwight Eisenhower was brought in to be put on a low fat diet as a way to sell it to the public. And right after he started that diet, he had a heart attack and died.
And that's the whole heart attack thing on the low fat diet has been proven. They've put people on strict diets to test this, and the low fat, vegan high grain people always had more heart attacks. In fact, as far as I know, the first heart attack wasn't even recorded until they invented vegetable oils.
That's not surprising. And then, of course, there's a whole industry around that, heart disease.
Well, yeah, and it's okay. So out here in Southern California, we have Loma Linda University Medical Center. It's a vegetarian. It's a Seventh-day Adventist community, which is a portion of the church that's vegetarian. And so, how does a vegetarian community have the leading heart hospital in the world? Let me ask you that one.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, And so Dr. Stephen Gundry, he's got commercials all over YouTube
Oh, I've
now,
seen
but
that. Yeah.
he was the president of the American Heart Association, and he was the president of cardiothoracic surgery at Loma Linda. He finally figured it out, and he figured it out after Dr. Bill Davis did, that I had on the show. And as soon as he realized it, he quit the American Heart Association. He quit Loma Linda. He's like, we don't need to be doing heart surgeries anymore. The heart surgeries are because we tell people to eat their healthy whole grains. So my stepdad had a triple bypass at Loma Linda in 2010, and he's going in for his biweekly checkups, and they're telling him, you're getting worse, you're getting worse. And so then I'm like, look, you got to stop eating the grains and stop listening to their advice. So he starts eating steak, meat, butter, eggs, this kind of stuff. He goes back again for his bi-monthly checkup, and then the doctor says, what did you do? And he says, I stopped listening to your dietary advice. Because it's a hospital filled with vegetarians telling everybody to eat freaking healthy whole grains and crap. And so that bleached, nasty Wonder Bread that was, thin and stuck to the roof of your mouth, that stuff is actually far healthier for you than these whole grain breads, And
That's
the whole
incredible.
grains have all the phytic and the oxalic acids and all this stuff. And the reason why our ancestors bleached this stuff and broke it down like that was to make it consumable. And then they added in riboflavin and niacin and all of this stuff to make it nutritious again. But people were like, oh, well, we need to eat just the healthy whole grain stuff. That stuff is poisonous. We've seen the worst health epidemic since people started eating healthy whole grains.
So you're saying whole grains and all of that stuff you get at the health food store is not good?
It's crap.
But isn't that natural? I mean, isn't that how bread was made for like 1,000 years?
Yeah, well, it used to be considered that diabetes was, and you can look this up, diabetes used to be called the Jewish disease. And it was because, the bagels and these sort of things. And then it kind of spread around to the rest of the population. The more people ate bread and, high fructose corn syrup and sugar, the more everybody got diabetes. But it used to be considered the Jewish disease.
But I thought bread was part of most cultures, no?
Yes and no. Some cultures use flatbread. A lot of cultures didn't use wheat, like the American cultures didn't use any wheat at all. They used corn. They developed corn.
Right.
But here's the thing: is when you track the growth of civilizations and kingships and the supply of cheap food sources to the poor, you can look right at grains. I mean, it's a good store of food for famines and whatnot to get through a famine, but it was never meant to be like, you have cereal for breakfast, a sandwich or burger at lunch, or pizza and lasagna for dinner, and if you do that, you're stacking it. And so by the time I was in 8th grade, I was getting sick all the time. And when I hit 24, 25, I was sick from then until 39, up until the time I met Bill Davis, author of Wheat Belly. And he was like, yeah, eat lots of steak, eat lots of meat, butter, and eggs, cut out the, the bread and everything. And it completely reversed within a couple of months. And then one day I went over to the pizza place up here, and I had a Philly cheesesteak. I didn't even get through the sandwich before my stomach and intestines shut down.
And that's because of the bread part of this sandwich, right?
Right. Yeah. If I had just peeled off the cheese and the steak, when you get a pizza, the worst part of the pizza is the bread, the grease, the cheese, the meat, all of that stuff is the healthy part.
That's the good part.
That's the good part.
I think that in colonial Boston, the main staple of diet was Indian pudding, which I think is a bread-based thing. I mean, most people subsisted on that and beer.
You do see celiac disease showing up in in early Roman times, so I mean, we have the word gluttony, right?
Gluten. There you
Gluten.
go.
And and it's also where we get the word glue from.
Well, I mean, I suppose that the most fun things to eat, quote unquote, are cookies, cake, all that. So I guess that is total grain ultimately with sugar mixed in.
With sugar mixed in. So you're stacking everything. I mean, you can get gluten-free cookies and stuff these days, but less bad is still not good, as Bill Davis, said on my show.
Oh, that's interesting. I should have him on. That's
I haven't been able to get him to. I've tried to invite him back on a number of times. See, I had him on before he got super famous on Oprah Winfrey and all of that stuff. So
okay, so he's gotten too big.
Right, and there's a doctor, a sugar expert from the Bay Area that I've tried to get on a number of times, and he got too big too. I couldn't even get.
Oh, it's a big industry. So,
yeah.
And I'm glad they're doing that, doing it if they're giving that kind of advice.
But and then what you had was this huge attack on the meat industry for all of the obesity and the heart disease and all of this stuff. And Oprah Winfrey was out there promoting all of that, and then you have PETA and the vegan groups and all that, and the meat industry got attacked for something that was entirely not their fault.
Right, them and the dairy industry. But getting back to the COVID, so the highest percentage of people who are dying from this, and it is a respiratory disease, are people who are fat. And being fat, of course, and by the way, not that I should talk, being fat is there's accompanying illnesses that come with that, like diabetes and high blood pressure. And when you get this disease, it is a lung problem, and that's what is the cause of death. So, I mean, I suppose the lesson here would be how to get healthier. And I think it particularly affects the minority community because African Americans, particularly African American women, I know this is not politically correct to point this out, but there is an obesity problem there. And they are particularly vulnerable to this disease.
It's always been the case, unfortunately, throughout history, that poor people have had the worst health.
And why is that? Because they get cheap foodstuffs like, grain-based foods, snack
donuts.
Foods,
yeah.
Donuts, crackers,
Twinkies.
Cookies, Twinkies,
sure.
and they put these nasty fast food restaurants in every ghetto,
Oh, I know. And you get Dunkin' Donuts and, they could do a little modification and save a lot of people's health. They could maybe cut back a little on the sugar, I think, in those things, and nobody would really notice, but they know sugar's addictive. And so they put the sugar in, I think, extra to get people hooked on that.
Once you get past the first 2 or 3 months of grains, you get a fog that lifts off your brain, your health feels so much better, your energy levels go up. If any insomnia goes away, most health problems start clearing up, and then you actually can begin to see health issues in other people, and then you never even want to touch the stuff again.
Oh, absolutely. John, I want to go to you. What's going on in your neck of the woods? I mean, you've written a book on the corporatization of education. Has education taken a hit as a result of the pandemic? I understand that, for example, with colleges, there's about a quarter of the students are not enrolling in the fall. They're taking a gap year. And that could be devastating to the whole academic world.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if I fiddled with my microphone. Yeah, I don't have classes for one of my schools in the summer. There wasn't enough enrollment. There's one that's not filled, so I might not have any classes. There was a lot of attrition, which means when people drop out, more than usual. I mean, I teach at community college, so there's always a few people that drop out. But when we went online, man, a lot more. I close to half, and they're trying to do things where you can withdraw and not have to pay the money or get an F and stuff like that. But what's more frightening to me, what's more pernicious to me is this move towards automation, and we're basically being forced to do it because we're stuck doing the asynchronous online learning. And I was in a meeting earlier, and one of the things that we talked about was we all feel like we're working 24 hours a day now, because since it's asynchronous, you kind of got to have your email and your notification because, every student might contact you, morning, night. So in some ways, you don't have to drive to the class and, do the mobile lecture and stuff. But it's like, I feel like the first thing I do when I wake up is click my module. The last thing I do is click my module. And it's kind of disorienting. Everything bleeds together. And what I told everybody was the other part is, a lot of students are night owls. So they're going to be messaging you, even if you have your stuff accessible 24/7. They're going to be messaging at you at times when you can't get to them. So there's going to be frustration with ends, and the solution is going to be adaptive learning software, which is going to automate most of the instruction. And there's a federal regulations that just got passed by the Department of Ed. It's 85 FR 18638, which deregulates the requirements for online learning and for adaptive learning software. And then the CARES Act is giving out money for this. Another development is DeVos just gave out a competition for grants for distance learning, competency-based ed. It's basically all the stuff I'm talking about. They're just jargon words they like to use to confuse people. And then the third one is that the Gates Foundation is pushing some new distance learning rebuild education project. It's taken off in New York. It's called Reimagine Education. And Eric Schmidt of Alphabet is going to sit on the chair, be one of the chairs for it. So all of that is kind of ramming through right now. And as far as the school goes.
Well, if I could just say, I think one of the positive aspects of this is that there's been a big resurgence in homeschooling, which I think is a great movement. And it's one that's very suited to individual needs. You could be liberal, conservative, whatever your orientation is politically or philosophically, you can find homeschooling that suits you. And to me, this is a great way to break away from this whole rotten top-down national common core federalized, globalized education system. It brings it down to a local level. So the idea of having an online feature as an aspect to me could be positive if you understand it like anything else and you know how to use it.
Yeah, I do think that it has those benefits, but when what they're doing is they're not really mandating that you have to have the software and the adaptive learning stuff and the career pathways program that comes with it. They're not mandating that, but they are giving out money for it. And there's a lot of parents that probably feel like they couldn't just buy books and sit down and teach their kids the traditional, scholarly way of reading classical text, classical trivium, all that type of stuff. So they're going to want software because they're going to feel like it's better than they can do. And then the other part is, people that don't have a lot of money. Well, another part of the CARES Act is they're going to pay, they're going to give micro grants to basically, if you don't have a computer, if you don't have software, so they'll pay for that too. And so, when you combine that with the federal money comes with federal regulations. And I agree with everything that you're saying, but what I'm seeing is they want to turn your house into the government school through the corporate software, as opposed to you're homeschooling your kids based on your values and your, curriculum, whatever that might be.
Right, but I think that conservatives and libertarians and freedom-oriented people have a little leg up on this department. I mean, there's a lot out there that we can introduce. Phonics, proper reading information for younger people to start to develop reading ability. Hillsborough College is a good resource. There's a lot of other resources that we can really use the free market to start to develop online. And the government is going to try to put their nose into it, just like they've done to the big, massive public schools and colleges. But to me, this is an opportunity for more freedom-oriented people. I mean, that's how I see it.
Yeah, so I would say is that just make sure that do your best to not take the federal money, and then everything you're saying can fly, just the way you want it to, right?
And to be a wise consumer in all of these things, whether it be education or health, as Jan, you were talking about. I mean, there are a lot of lessons that could be learned from this whole nasty episode we're all going through right now. So, but listen, I really appreciate all you coming on with me today. This is very encouraging to me. I now know that I can do this. I can have like a real live talk show, and I can stream it live on YouTube, which is where we're going, and Facebook and about 5 other venues. And once I get this thing moving along and I get it established as a daily thing, I'm going to really start to build, I think, a live stream show. So that's my goal. Each of you should mention what it is you're working on. If you want to give out any information about your work or websites or whatever. Why don't we start with you, Jan?
Oh, let's see. Well, my website, logosmedia.com, I've been doing podcasting for about 12 years. For the last decade, I've worked at exposing the counterculture, the 60s counterculture and psychedelic revolution. I'm a bit of an expert on psychedelic drugs and the counterculture and the 60s hippie movement, the music, all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Probably done about 200 shows exposing all of that. I used to be in favor of psychedelics initially. Back in 2008, I started my show interviewing about 65 of the world's leading psychedelic experts, and about 2/3 of the way through the project, I realized the whole thing was a fraud and came out against it, exposing it. Brought out the wolves against me for exposing all of that. The entire 60s counterculture revolution and the psychedelic movement was the real CIA's MKUltra program, which they tried to bait and switch into a Manchurian Candidate type thing, which was a small fragment of that operation. And the bulk of it was the 60s hippie movement and getting teenagers listless and high on drugs and, causing extended adolescence so that they wouldn't start their families, so that they would be caught up in iniquity and hypersex and fornicating in the mud to their rock idols or graven images. So this whole thing was staged and planned to break the family, and Aldous Huxley was the primary engineer behind that program. Tim Leary, Aldous Huxley, Terrence McKenna, all of these characters, Ken Kesey, the Merry Pranksters, the Grateful Dead, they were all CIA. They were all part of the operation. We have Bob Weir admitting that they were CIA, Uncle Sam, playing in a rock and roll band, this kind of crap. And so that whole thing was designed to break the culture post World War II, and the
it's a great issue.
boomers.
I just had on a friend of yours, Colin Ross from the Ross Institute, who talked about the CIA psychiatrists.
Well, he was the one that first turned me on that Gordon Wasson was Subproject 58, and I got a hold of all the documents that back that. But he and I did a 3-part series maybe 8 years ago. And, and I had discovered a lot of information back then that he didn't know. He wasn't aware back then that the entire counterculture was MKUltra. He was more narrowly focused, but we were able to expand out what the real focus was. I've done a lot
subject,
of
it's something that I intend to pursue and have various people on moving forward. It's a very important subject. And let's talk a little bit to you, John. I mean, what are you up to?
I think I'm supposed to be going on the Opperman report soon. I don't know, that's still in the making. I'm just published another article basically breaking down, if you want more details on all those regulations I just talked about. It's COVID-19 CARES Act bankrolls post-human AI. It's on several different publications. And I'm writing about the Reimagine Education project right now. If you want to, I'm trying to do a little bit of research, posting it on Twitter every day. So if you want to go to my Taoist professor at Professor Taoist Twitter, I'm posting stuff because it takes me a while to write an article. So I try to, put little sprinkles out there as I go. But those are the two things. And if you want to check out my website, schoolworldorder.info, I've got online bibliography there with links to all the sources in my book, including 66 Gates Foundation grants that tie into everything I just talked about. So you can link to specific grants there too.
Incredible. MDS.
Well, yeah, you know me.
Yes.
But yeah, my actual name is Michael Shaw. I'm primarily involved in the scientific instrument business, but I've been a commentator on media. I've had a weekly column in Health News Digest, and I've written about various health issues. We got about 900 articles online. So
Yeah, Mike, you've done some very good, groundbreaking work in that area. Give out the website for that.
okay, well, healthnewsdigest.com is the site that one of the main sites I write for. I mirror everything though on the corporate site gasdetection.com, which is my day job. But I've been plugging away on this COVID thing and others.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm happy to see you're back into it.
Yeah,
So,
I'm doing what I can. I'm trying to
yeah.
learn all the new technologies, and I'm kind of ham-handed, but
Do
I'm
you
plugging away.
go by Chuck or is it Charles now?
Charles, I had to change my name. That's a whole different subject. I could talk about that separately, but there was some things going on that required that I do that.
Okay.
So anyway, all of you gentlemen, thanks so much for joining me this afternoon. I really
Thanks much.
appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right. Have a good one.